Welcome to our channel, Psyverge. We tell ourselves that we're afraid of being alone, that what we fear is the silence, the empty room, the unanswered phone, the quiet house with no footsteps but our own. But that's a lie. A soft one. A convenient one. The truth is harder, heavier, and more uncomfortable to hold. We don't fear loneliness. We fear meeting the person who lives in that silence. Ourselves. When the distractions fall away, the messages stop coming, the plans get cancelled, the noise dies down, we're left with the one person we've spent years avoiding. Not a stranger, not a villain, but a version of ourselves we've kept buried under habits, performances, and lies. And the scariest part? That version isn't unfamiliar. It's unfiltered, raw, unedited, and it sees through everything we've constructed to survive. Philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." That's not just about boredom, it's about confrontation. Sitting in a room alone is the most psychologically violent thing most people will ever do. Because in that moment, there's no one else to blame, no one to impress, no one to manipulate. Just you. And that's when the masks slip. Modern psychology calls it self-confrontation. The process of facing the truth about yourself without rationalization or external validation. It's what most people pay therapists for, not to heal, but to be gently guided toward the parts of themselves they've been running from. In silence, those parts scream louder than ever. The insecurities, the regrets, the shame, the wounds that haven't been cleaned, only covered. Loneliness isn't the fear of being alone. It's the fear of self-exposure. Because when there's no one else around, the charades end. You can't pretend to be busy. You can't perform your role. There's no audience, only a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They reflect, even the parts we wish weren't there. Especially those parts. It's why people stay in toxic relationships. Why they scroll endlessly. Why they work themselves to exhaustion. It's not always about connection or productivity. It's about sedation, emotional anesthesia. If I keep moving, I won't have to feel. If I keep talking, I won't have to listen. If I keep chasing, I won't have to stop. And if I don't stop, maybe I'll never have to meet myself. But the problem is, we always meet ourselves. Eventually. In breakdowns. In isolation. In regret. In the middle of the night when no one texts back, and the silence becomes unbearable. That's when the real you shows up. The child inside you who still needs love. The adult who hasn't forgiven themselves. The critic. The dreamer. The broken parts still pretending they're whole. Philosophers like Nietzsche believed that solitude was essential, not just for strength, but for truth. "He who cannot endure solitude," he wrote, "is a slave." Why? Because if you can't be alone with yourself, then everything you do is a performance for someone else. You are not free. You're just playing a role to keep the pain away. A mask that smiles so you don't have to face the face beneath. There's a term in psychoanalysis called the false self. It's the version of us that was built for approval, survival, acceptance. It's who we became to get through childhood, to be liked, to be safe. But the longer we wear that mask, the harder it becomes to tell where it ends and where we begin. Loneliness peels that mask off, and what we see underneath is terrifying. Not because it's ugly, but because it's real. Loneliness is the doorway to authenticity. That's why people avoid it. That's why they say, "I hate being alone." What they mean is, I hate who I become when I can't perform. I hate the thoughts that come, the memories, the guilt, the unfulfilled dreams, the truths I keep buried because I don't know what to do with them. And yet, loneliness is also the birthplace of transformation. No one evolves in a crowd. No one changes while being watched. Growth happens in solitude, in darkness, in silence. When everything falls away, we're left with the truth. And that truth is this: you are not who you pretend to be. You are who you are when no one is watching. It's why monks retreat into silence. Why mystics wander into the desert. Why the most profound personal growth doesn't come from books or lectures. It comes from sitting still and meeting the monster within. Because only by facing the monster can we realize it was never a monster to begin with. Just a wounded part of us, screaming for attention. The truth is, loneliness isn't the enemy. It's the revealer, the purifier. It shows you what's real by taking away what's fake. It removes the noise so you can hear your soul whisper. That whisper might be terrifying at first, because it asks hard questions. Why are you really angry? Why are you still afraid? Why do you sabotage yourself? Why are you pretending to be someone you're not? Most people don't want those answers. They'd rather blame society, blame exes, blame trauma, blame fate. But eventually, the silence gets too loud. The distractions lose their taste, and you're left standing in front of your own shadow, with no one left to blame but the reflection in the glass. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can run, again, into another relationship, another addiction, another identity. Or you can stay, sit, listen, understand. That's when healing begins. Not when you feel good, but when you stop running. When you finally say, I will meet myself. I will look into the abyss and not turn away. Carl Jung called it integrating the shadow. It's the process of becoming whole, not by getting rid of your dark side, but by embracing it, understanding it, letting it speak. Because the parts of you that you've been taught to fear are the parts that hold your power, your freedom, your truth. So maybe the next time you feel lonely, you don't need to panic. You don't need to pick up the phone, or distract yourself, or run. Maybe the loneliness isn't a punishment, but an invitation. To sit with yourself, to listen, to grieve, to forgive. And maybe, to finally meet the person you've been avoiding your entire life. Because the truth is, you don't fear loneliness. You fear being unmasked. You fear that without all the distractions, the noise, the applause, you won't be enough. But that's the lie. The truth is, you were always enough. You were just afraid to look. And when you do, really do, you might just find that solitude doesn't feel like loneliness at all. It feels like coming home. Because once you've sat in that silence long enough, the fear begins to shift. The things you once tried so hard to escape, your sadness, your guilt, your disappointments, they start to feel familiar, less like threats and more like signals. They aren't there to destroy you. They're there to inform you, to show you where you've been lying to yourself, to point out the parts that still ache, the pieces you've neglected in your rush to appear okay. And something remarkable happens when you stop trying to fight those feelings. You realize they're not as loud as you thought. It wasn't the pain that was unbearable. It was your resistance to it. It was your refusal to listen, to feel, to sit with the truth instead of covering it with distraction. You realize the monster in the mirror doesn't want to hurt you. It just wants to be acknowledged. You don't find yourself in the crowd. You lose yourself there. You become whatever the room needs you to be. You laugh when others laugh. You nod when they nod. You say things you don't mean. Wear clothes you don't like. Agree to things that hurt you. And when the crowd disperses, you're left with the hollowness of a life lived for everyone but you. The price of avoiding loneliness is your identity, your soul, your freedom. Because when you avoid being alone, you let the world write your script. And worse, you lose the ability to write your own. Solitude isn't comfortable, but it is sacred. It's the forge of inner strength, of integrity, of truth. People who have spent time in their own darkness, willingly, consciously, carry a quiet kind of confidence. Not because they're better, but because they know what they're made of. They've met their fear and survived it. They've seen their flaws and owned them. They've made peace with their past, even the parts that still sting. And now they no longer fear being alone, because they are no longer alone with a stranger. They are alone with themselves, and that is no longer something to escape from. It's something to return to. This is the path most people never take. The path of radical honesty. of sitting in a room and letting the silence speak, of walking into the parts of your psyche where the light doesn't reach. That's where authenticity lives. That's where healing begins. That's where you stop pretending and start becoming. Because in the end, it's not the noise that defines us. It's not the applause or the attention or the approval. It's who we are when everything else falls away, when the lights are off, when the show ends, when there's no one left to impress but your own soul. So the next time you feel that ache, that quiet panic when you're alone, don't run from it. Sit with it. Ask it what it wants to show you, what it's trying to reveal, and listen. Because maybe, just maybe, the person you've been trying to avoid in the silence is the only one who can truly save you. And maybe that's the point.